thing that pops up that says, yeah. Did I दिखा दूं ना?
Okay.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Inshallah, in today's talk, which is part 7 of the series regarding the life of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, we will talk about two eras of his life quickly today, inshallah, briefly, which is one is about his life during the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu's Khilafah, and then we will talk about life and role of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu in the Khilafah of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. So we'll talk very briefly both the eras, inshallah. We'll cover that today. And prior to that, I will just quickly talk about what we talked about last week, not necessarily going into any much details, but just to have some summary of it so we have a connection to the previous talks. As we have seen so far, we started off with the life of Uthman bin Affan prior to Islam, how he was during the Jahiliyyah, and then we talked about his life when he became a Muslim and during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's prophethood in Mecca. What was his role and what he did, including his migration. And then we talked about his life in the Medina era of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his prophethood. So now today, or last week, I'm sorry, we talked about Medina life when we were covering it up, and we talked about the glad tidings that Allah Azza wa Jal gave to Uthman bin Affan, to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of the Jannah. And also we talked about his one of the main characteristics of his personality, which was the haya of Uthman, or the modesty of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. And what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned about the fitna that was going to come, was going to hit Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, and the instructions that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave Uthman to act and or behave during that time. Now today, inshallah, we'll talk about, as I said, about his life and his role during the era of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, when he was a Khalifa, and he was a Khalifa for a short period of time, but it's a very difficult time, if you want to say it, but that shows the strength of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, how he tackled with one of the most difficult circumstances the Ummah faced at that time, right after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were a huge number of people who became apostates. There was a ridda was going on, apostasy, whether it was apostasy directly of leaving the deen of Islam, and or about apostasy of zakah, whether they were refusing completely to give the zakat to Abu Bakr Siddiq as the Khalifa to Rasul, or they were saying that they would not give to Abu Bakr, rather they will give distribute by themselves. In all cases, that was a situation, and that's the difficult situation Abu Bakr was going through. Now, in the era of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, what we see Uthman's role is, in general, we can see in two aspects of it. One was his continuation, if you want to call it, of his economic help to the state that he did, even that we talked about previous talks as well, how in the Medina time period of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the state was in the premature stage, and how he helped out financially, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam promised him the Jannah as well for many of the acts that he did. And we will find that in the time of Abu Bakr as well, that Uthman's continuation of his financial support in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continued on. And the other main role that we see in Abu Bakr's life, or his Khilafah, and also the Khilafah of Abu Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, was his advisory role, that he was an advisor, he was a consultant, he was the person to go for the shura that we find that they used to go to. And Uthman bin Affan was consulted for most important matters of the state by Abu Bakr Siddiq, and also he was part of the Majlis Shura, or the Shura, which means that to whom that the state Khalifa would go and get the consultation. And we see that this is also in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, Rasulullah also had people that he used to do the shura with. As one of the reports talk about, there was a group of people from Al-Ansar, and there was a group of people from Al-Muhajirin that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to consult with when the shura was needed. And we all understand that. We have mentioned that many times, just for more of a reminder that whenever we talk about the shura, we should have a correct understanding of the shura. Shura is not is for coming up with the rules or coming up with understanding of the deen itself per se or something. Shura is about something when it comes to the rules, ahkam. That ahkam comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So shura is about mubah matters. Mubah means that something which is permissible made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And among those mubah choices, you are choosing one of the choices. Now, so Uthman was one of the people who was consulted heavily by Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh. He was part of the shura. And it would not be incorrect to say after Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he was the second person that Abu Bakr would go for. As we know that Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh was very close to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, to the point that there are riwayat that discuss like this, that some people would not be able to distinguish who's the Khalifa, Umar or Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh. He was that closely working with Abu Bakr. Now, but after Umar, the second closest person to Abu Bakr Siddiq was Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh. And his opinions was held very high by Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, and he would ask for Uthman's opinion. And as one of the things that was mentioned about, after Abu Bakr was done with the Ridda movement or the apostasy movement that was going on, now he wanted to go after the Byzantines. Byzantine was a Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire at that time. And Abu Bakr, as a matter of fact, it was actually happening in parallel as well. And he asked the Sahaba, he started consulting about attacking the Byzantines now. When we talk about Byzantine attacking and all those things, of course, this is the purpose was to remove the barriers so the people would be able to hear out Islam. You cannot force Islam over the people. It was more to carry the message of Islam to the people, and the ones who were preventing the people to hear the message of Islam. For that, these battles were done. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, he wanted to go, and he started asking the Sahaba about their advice, that what would they suggest. And of course, this can be done through the shura as well. And Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, when he was asked by Abu Bakr, he said, what do you think? To Uthman, Uthman said, I think, and quote, I think you are sincere and kind towards the followers of this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the deen of Islam. And he said, if you think that something is in their best interest, then go ahead with it. If you you know you are not the one who will be accountable for this, because you know what you are doing. Now, there were other Sahaba among the rest of Sahaba over there that included the great Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, including Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu anh, Zubair bin Awam, Sa'ad bin Abi Waqas, Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, and Sa'id bin Zayd. And these, and among the Muhajirin and Ansar people were there. And the one names which are mentioned here, these are the names of the Ashra Mubashara, the one who were given the glad tidings of the Jannah in this dunya. And it is very important for us to also see that these Sahaba who were given this glad tiding of the Jannah in this dunya is because of the actions they did for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember that it's not just They were just belonging, because they belong to a family, hence they are given the glad tidings of a Jannah, or they had certain amount of wealth, hence they were given the glad tidings of Jannah. Rather, their actions were the one that made them deserving of this status that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to them. So when we read the lives of, besides right now we're going over the life of Uthman bin Affan, and we saw that kind of things that he have done already that we have discussed, that entitled him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him this news about being from the people of Jannah. And same thing we can see about Talha bin Ubaidullah, Zubayr bin Awam, Sa'id bin Zayd, Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, and so on and so forth. So now these Sahaba, the great Sahaba, they right away also agreed with Uthman bin Affan. That's how his advice were taken, upheld by the Sahaba. I know it's not necessarily mean that always whatever Uthman says should go, but we find that, and the response of these Sahaba was that Uthman has spoken the truth, and whatever you think is best, go ahead with it. So they reaffirmed Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Similarly, when Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu in his time, he wanted to appoint a governor of Bahrain. And he consulted his Sahaba and Uthman bin Affan. So Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, as I said, one of the key role of his was consultancy or advisory, and advice which is taken by the Khalifa. That's a key thing, that they look up to the advice of Uthman bin Affan, and because of his wisdom. Now Uthman says, send a man to whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent to them. And when Rasulullah sent that person as a governor, he came back with the news that they had become Muslim. People of Bahrain became Muslim because of he was sent. And they know him, and he knows them. And he knows them, the country as well, because he was there. And who was he talking about? It was Ala ibn al-Hadrami he was referring to. So Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu took his advice and made him the governor of Bahrain. So again, Uthman bin Affan's role here was to give the advice to the Khalifa of that time, Abu Bakr Siddiq, and that was done by him. Now, when it comes to the economic situation or his help in Islam by Abu Bakr Siddiq, just one second. Okay. It is narrated by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu that there was a drought during the era of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And we know of the drought in the time of Umar al-Khattab also, but this was a drought that was in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu as well. And people came to Abu Bakr Siddiq and said, it has not rained, and earth is not bringing forth its produce. So they were suffering, and hardship was going on. Abu Bakr Siddiq said, be patient, and for evening will not come before Allah the Azza wa Jal will grant you relief. So he was saying that. And it was because of Uthman bin Affan caravan was coming back from Syria, from Sham. And when they came, the people came to Uthman bin Affan, the one who wanted to make money of these kind of the goods are coming into to Medina. And of course, in that kind of a situation, when the drought is there, food goods are not available, you can make more money out of it. So they came and they asked, they want to buy. So they knocked at the Uthman's door and they want to buy it. So they said, what do you want? They said, it has not rained and earth is not bringing forth. It's produced and people are suffering. So now these people, they wanted to buy. And they offer him, for every 10, we'll give you 12. And then they want to increase the. But Uthman bin Affan said, no, I'd rather have more than that. I'd rather have more than that. And can you match? And they said, what do you want? He said that he said, I have a better offer. And they said 15 for 10. Uthman said, I have a better offer again. And those merchants, they are thinking of, they said, Abu Amr. Remember we talked about his kunya? It was one time that people used to call Abu Amr, and then later on it was called Abu Abdullah as well, because after he had a son from Ruqayya, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, they say, Abu Amr, there are no merchants in the Medina other than us who has given you better offer than this. You cannot get, for every 10, I'm giving you 15. So he said, Allah, may he be blessed and exalted, has given me a better offer. 10 for every dirham, can you give for every 10 times? any one good deed that you do, the least Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives in return is 10 for one good deed. So he said, Allah is giving me 10 for 1. So can you offer me more than that? And they said, no, by Allah. Then he said, I call upon Allah to bear witness that I am giving this food as a charity, as a sadaqah for all the poor Muslims. Subhanallah. That's the far-sightedness. We were just having some discussion about short-sightedness and far-sightedness that people have. And this is called far-sightedness. This is called understand the purpose of life. What is the purpose of life that we have in this dunya? And we understand that this life as a whole is a test for us, that the real life is after this life is over in reality. So now it's up to us. We can go crazy and break all the commands or the rules of Allah Azza wa Jal, displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have may have some goodies of this dunya for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 1,000 years. But when you compare even whatsoever life we talk about with the life forever, it is nothing. And it is really silly idea to abandon your life forever for a limited life, no matter how big that limited life can be, because any limitedness is nothing compared to life forever. And that's what Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh understood it well. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us understand these things and live by these kind of understanding and the commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, think of this from current life or the current systems of lives that we are living in where everything is connected to just a worldly benefit. And we find that people would do anything for the sake of a few dollars, or if I'm talking the dinar and dirham, few dirham and dinars. They would, many of them, they abandon many commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not realizing that they are selling the ayat of Allah Azza wa Jal for very cheap price. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, وَلَا تَشْتَرُوا بِآيَاتِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا, that do not sell my ayat, my verses, at a cheap price. And it applies to the people who are twisting the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get some few worldly benefits, or the one who are aware of something that Allah has commanded, but they abandon those commands just to get some few benefits in this dunya. And that's what the current systems of life, which is based off secularism that produced, whether it's capitalism or communism or socialism, whatsoever isms are there, we find them that the people are just trying to make this worldly life as beneficial as possible at the stake of breaking many laws of Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay. Now moving forward, when Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh in his time, when he was on his deathbed and he was very sick, and he started asking Sahaba ridwanullah alayhim, especially some of the names that I already mentioned, from the one who were given the glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya, and the ones who were the leaders among the Ansar and the Muhajirin. And he consulted Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh as well about Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, that he was going to appoint or nominate Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh as the Khalifa. And Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, his reply to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh was that, by Allah, what I know of him is that he is better inwardly than he is outwardly. Talking about Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh. And there is no one like him. And the response of Abu Bakr was, may Allah have mercy on you. By Allah, if you had not suggested Umar, I would have been disappointed. He knew about Uthman. See, that's the key thing that to understand. These Sahaba, when we talk about them, when they referred as the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they did not miss a chance to spend time with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they used to spend time with each other as well. And hence you find them, they were synced with each other. They understood well of each other. And the reason was because they understood the meaning of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah in a very clear way. And they submitted themselves to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. when you submit yourself to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, automatically many things become synced automatically for you. Yes, you can have differences, and we know there were differences among the Sahaba as well, and there are valid differences that you can have in Islam. That's not a problematic thing to have. So anyway, so moving forward, and then so that was up to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh passed away. And as I said, we are going very briefly about his role in life. Just want to highlight some of the things that he, and these are very important aspects, by the way, within those that period of time. So in the time of Umar radiallahu anh as well, you find him a great consultant for Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh. So when Umar, after Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh became the Khalifa, so he used to approach always Uthman bin Affan and Abdurrahman bin Auf. These two Sahaba, he would approach them all the time for any kind of shura, any kind of consultancy, advice that he's looking for. To the point, Uthman was known as a Radif. Radif means in Arabic is referred to one who rides behind or stands behind another. And also it has the meaning of you are actually prepared for something for later work. So now Uthman bin Affan was known to be a Radif for Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, the one who will be following up Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh to be taking the staff. So these people, we see that they were built and they were prepared for the job that they were going to take over later on. And similarly, even in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I was giving a talk somewhere last Wednesday, and we were just looking into the time between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated from Mecca to Medina until the Ghazwatul Badr happened. Okay, and that time period comes out to be about 18 months or so, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated in the month of Rabiul Awwal, and the Badr happened in the Ramadan of the second year of the Hijrah. Yeah, that comes out about 18 months. Those 18 months, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had 8 Saraya and Ghazwat before the Badr al-Kubra happened. Excuse me, I just need some water. Jazakallah khair. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had about 8 expeditions, different missions, a couple of them Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself led, that's why they are referred as Ghazawat, and the others Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam appointed a Sahabi to go for the mission, and they are called Saraya or Sariya. Now, whenever Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left Medina, he would leave a person behind to be as the ruler of Medina, to taking care of the affairs. Hence, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was preparing different people for the task to be coming up. It's not that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was going to be among us forever in this dunya. So he prepared the people behind him as well. And this is what we see when we're talking about Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, the way he was dealing with Uthman, as he is one of the people who will be prepared. Same way Abdurrahman bin Auf, we see that radiallahu anhuma. Now, if these two Sahaba were not able to conclude something, then he would approach Abbas radiallahu anh, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, so that was from the advisory perspective. Now, when it comes to advice, as we can see that it's not that he had only Uthman around him. He would take the consultancy of Uthman all the time. But for example, when the issue of Bayt al-Maqdis came up, Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah radiallahu anh, when he came and mentioned to Umar al-Khattab what's going on, when they did the muhasara, when they did the siege of Palestine or Al-Quds at that time. Now, so he called the Sahaba, and it's called Salatu Jami'ah, which is you gather the people for Salah, but also you are giving the talk. about some important matter that you want to discuss. So when Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu called for that, there's a place called Surar. This is where they gathered. Uthman asked Umar, why are we here? So then he replied to, after the Salah, Abu Bakr said, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he asked for what should be done for Bayt al-Maqdis, to conquer Bayt al-Maqdis now at that time. Because the news that Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah brought, there was a siege going on, but it got to the point where they were asking for Umar to be the one who should come, the people of Al-Quds. Now, Uthman suggested, he said that he should not go to them as a token for humiliation towards them. That we are going to fight, as a token of humiliation for them. He said to Umar, but if you stay here and do not go to them, they will think that you are not worried about them, okay, and are prepared to fight them, okay, and they will soon feel humiliated and pay the jizya. So that's another option that he was saying. You have to think what to be done. Now, Ali radiallahu anhu, he's the one who suggested, no, you should go. And Uthman bin Affan, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, in this case, listen to Ali, and we know the history, what happened later on. So I'm not going to go into this. We have discussed this aspect when we were discussing the life of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. But the point here is not just because you are a consultant, you are taking the advice from, it doesn't have to be taken all the time. And that for Sahaba, that was not an issue among them. So they were, nowadays, many times you will find that it becomes an issue of ego. How can you take the advice from me and not accept it or not follow it? If you have taken the advice, then you must follow. And you see, and he is a great Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So was Ali radiallahu anhu. And Umar, at the end of the day, he understood he is the one who is accountable here as the head of the state in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, and he chose the best advice that he deemed at that time, and he followed Ali radiallahu anhu here. Now, when we continue to talk about his advisory role, as we said that he was the very close advisor to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. One thing that can be sensed very clearly, in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq, we know Abu Bakr was a very compassionate person. Abu Bakr was very compassionate, to the point, if you remember when we were discussing when Rasulullah was very sick, and he asked Aisha radiallahu anha to call Abu Bakr to lead the salah, and she was refusing. She was saying, no, he cries when he recites the Quran, so you should ask somebody else to do that. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about Aisha at that time certain words. I'm not going to detail of that again. Main point here is that Abu Bakr was very compassionate. He used to cry a lot when he used to recite the Quran. And then, but when he became Khalifa, he kept Umar al-Khattab close to him. And that kind of if you say that both of them together, the compassion of Abu Bakr and strictness of Umar al-Khattab, it created a very balanced environment in the Khilafah of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, right? And when, similar to Abu Bakr, Uthman was also a very compassionate person. So when Umar became Khalifa, now Abu Bakr is not there, so Uthman was very close to him. So that created another balance again in the state when Umar was the Khalifa and Uthman became a person very close to him and giving him advice all the time. So Uthman was very much like Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Now, in his time, in the Umar's time, another main issue happened was a lot of wealth started coming into the state. The Muslims were expanding, taking the land from the Romans and the Persians at that time, and it started expanding, and a lot of wealth started coming in to the Arabian Peninsula and the Medina. Now, at that time, again, Umar started consulting the Sahaba and what to do with all the wealth that's coming up. And Uthman bin Affan said, I think it is a lot of wealth. Now look, who's saying it is a lot of wealth? Uthman bin Affan himself, the one who was one of the richest people. He's saying it is a lot of wealth. And it's sufficient for everyone. What we are getting now is sufficient for everyone. But if the records are not kept in order, who has taken from it and not, that will become a lot of problematic thing, and we may not be able to fulfill the needs of the people properly. Hence, he suggested to acquire something called record keeping or diwan. Diwan system was acquired in the time of Umar al-Khattab, and Uthman radiallahu anh was one of the people who suggested Umar to follow this system. Now, this idea of following the diwan, unfortunately, nowadays the people who would try to undermine sometime, knowingly or unknowingly, about the strength of Islam and the comprehensiveness and the completeness of the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, that deal with all affairs of things. They say, look, Umar, he adopted diwan from the other states as the Persians or the Romans. Then it means that Islam does not give all the answers. Hence, we should be able to make our own laws and rules and regulations, because Umar made this law of his own. While they are not realizing, when we are talking about the diwan, the record keeping, these are administrative things, things how you organize, and for that the Khalifa has the right from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to organize these things. This is called administrative. This is not ahkam between the people. This is how you are organizing the things. Like, for example, when you have a street light for the traffic light. Traffic light is one of the administrative things that you place it there. It is a permissible thing for the Khalifa to adopt. So here, same way, the diwan is a record-keeping thing which is adopted by Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. He is not the one who's coming up with a new hukum shara'i or something here. Okay. Okay. Moving forward. So this is the advice of Uthman to come up with the diwan system. Similarly, in time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, we know that the calendar, Islamic calendar, was started in the time of Umar ibn Khattab. When I'm saying calendar, not talking about 12 months were known, that there are 12 months that starts from Muharram until the Dhul Hijjah. But when we talk about when this calendar was started, it happened in the time of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh. There was a case was brought in front of him, a contract was shown about and saying month of Shawwal in there. I'm sorry, Shawwal or Sha'ban, I forgot. Whichever one of the months of Islam was written there. It was not clear that which year was it saying. It did not say which year that the contract was going to be over. So the need was there to mention which year we are talking about. There should be a calendar to mark or count the number of years have passed, or something is going to be done in certain number of years. To count that, you need a calendar. So he consulted Umar al-Khattab to Sahaba that, okay, how do we mark Islamic calendar? And when this happened, different Sahaba came up with different ideas. And things like this was mentioned. We can do with the mark it with the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, mark it with the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or when the prophethood was given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of them was given was by the hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By the way, hijrahs were many. We know before this main hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sahaba migrated to Medina as well. Let's not forget that Sahaba migrated before Rasulullah to Medina, or even some Sahaba migrated to Habasha as well. But we don't mark by any of those dates of the Habasha migration twice, or the Sahaba's migration. But it's linked with the hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Umar ibn Khattab and the rest of the Sahaba agreed upon later on, that yes, our calendar should be by this hijrah. Why this hijrah was chosen? Because that this is the single most important event of the history of the mankind. Not only for the Muslims, in general for the mankind. Because this is the turning point for everything that was going to happen in the world later on. Hence, Sahaba agreed on the hijrah being the most important event. Hence, the calendar will be marked by the year of the hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is a normal thing, by the way, for all the mankind. You can see the people remember years by what? Or they have their own calendars by whatever is important for us. When it comes to individuals remember this way. Oh, this event happened prior to the wedding, marriage of my parents, for example, or before my birth, or after my birth, or my children's birth, or this wedding, or that, whatever is important for a family. They remember things like that. Yeah. Similarly, nations remember things by whatever happened. The most important event happened for them. Like, for example, here a lot of time we remember things by Was the event before 9/11 or after 9/11? Right? Or nowadays, because of the pandemic, we remember things by, oh, this is pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, or something happened in pandemic. So whatever important event happened, you remember this way. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's birth, we remember as it happened in the year of the Amul Fil, year of the elephant, when the Kaaba was attacked. So the kuffar of the Makkah, they used to relate to things that was an important event for them. Hence now Sahaba understood Hijrah is the most important, because here, from there on, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not only a prophet in the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he became the ruler now, and now Islam became from just calling the people toward Islam, now it went into implementation phase. And it's a very important aspect of it, to a point. Now we remember our calendar is based off the Hijrah. We divide the Quran into two, as the one that was revealed in the Meccan era and the Medina era, not the places, but the eras. Okay. All right, having said all that, even though this is not probably directly linked to Uthman, but Uthman was one of the people who was there for consultancy. Now, this was the reports talk about Ali was one of the people who suggested this one about Hijrah. And Sahaba, they all agreed on this, and they agreed, okay, Hijrah is the one. Now, which month will be the first month to be considered as? This is what Uthman radiallahu anh is the one who suggested to Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh. He said Muharram is the one should be marked as the first month, because it is a sacred month, one of the months which are referred as the Shahrul Haram, right? So he mentioned it should be the one. And also it is, people start when the people come back from Hajj. So now this is a new year for them from there on. So that was his suggestion, and Umar radiallahu anh and the Sahaba who were present there, they agreed that yes, we will start counting from that time. Even though Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he actually migrated in Rabiul Awwal. He did not migrate. He started his migration on the month of Safar and completed in Rabiul Awwal. But the year itself is started from the time that Uthman bin Affan suggested. Okay. Other thing Uthman mentioned, which is his advisory that was useful, was the Kharaji lands. That Uthman said that to Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, that all these conquered lands should not be divided among the conquerors and should be left as a source of income through the Kharaj. Kharaj is a tax that the Islam applies all those lands, farmlands we're talking about, that were opened by force, and hence that land becomes a Kharaji land, and it continues to be Kharaji until the day of judgment. Once a land is Kharaji, it continues to be Kharaji land. Opposing to that, the lands which are considered as the Ushri land, which is the land which Jaziratul Arab is one of the places, Arabian Peninsula, and all those lands that were open without any kind of a force. People accepted Islam, they're considered Ushri land. So they don't Ushr is a zakah on the produce. It's a separate subject. A point I want to make here is the Kharaj land in the time of Umar was not distributed among all the conquerors. Rather, it was kept for the people who will be coming later on, so they will get the benefit through the Kharaj wealth. And this becomes a source of continuous income for the state. And last thing that I will talk about today is, which is a very quick thing, in the life of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, the year that Umar performed the last Hajj, which was the 23rd year after the Hijrah, he allowed the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu Ummahatul Mu'mineen to perform the Hajj. And to perform the Hajj, for Hajj in general was given to Abdurrahman bin Auf to be in charge of the Hajj. And Umar would perform the Hajj, but he was a caretaker for the Hajj assigned by the state. And this is what's supposed to be done. Unfortunately, because we don't have the state now, so it is just done by people who have authority over there. Now, okay. Now, when Umar assigned that, he gave Uthman bin Affan and Abdurrahman bin Auf the charge to make sure that the Ummahatul Mu'mineen, our mothers of the believers and the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they will safely go to Mecca, perform the Hajj, and they are able to come back safely as well. And Uthman was one of the leaders in that the Hajj that was performed by Ummahatul Mu'mineen. So these are the few important things that I was able to highlight from which I mentioned in the books of the Seerah of Uthman bin Affan. Inshallah, next week we will talk about this one more aspect from the life of Umar about Uthman, was how Uthman bin Affan was elected as the Khalifa when Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu was stabbed. So we'll stop, inshallah, today's talk here. If there is any questions or comments, inshallah.